This is week 6 of our I Valentine quilt course, and this week we did the centre block, and in this video we're going to discuss with you how we stitched it.
I love this centre block. So do you want to tell us about your inspiration?
Sure, so the inspiration for this block was Valentine devotional cards.
Yeah.
And so this was the first block that I designed for the quilt, and then I wanted everything to come outwards.
Yeah.
But it was really funny because after Grandma passed away, this dove appeared in my backyard, and of course she'd come back as a dove because, she's very lovely and religious.
I mean, that's if you believe in all this sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's quite funny.
Yeah, there was a dove at my house and at Crescent Head, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Where we have a holiday house.
Yeah.
And so I just thought an ode to her and to the love of our family. I wanted to do some doves.
Yeah.
And then I wanted the design to kind of be a mirror image and go outwards like a true medallion style quilt.
Yeah, it's great, yeah. And, getting back to the dove's actually quite bossy. It's like it has its hands on its hips and it's walking around and it's making sure that, everything's neat and tidy and that everyone's doing the right thing. So, yeah, definitely.
Definitely Grandma.
Yeah.
And the roses that I used were, I took inspiration from Mum's Georgina Rose quilt, which was actually a quilt dedicated to Grandma as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's where I got the roses from, and also from the Lovebirds quilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're really fun to stitch around, aren't they?
They are, they are, yeah. So we've got a few tips and things just to share with everyone when they're making their centre block.
So this is a very large block. So Mum, what are your tips for sewing this block? Because sometimes with big blocks, things can pucker up.
Yeah, so it's not too bad. So it starts at 26.5 inches square, and we did cut that back in, I think, part 2 or part 3. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about this is that Alora has done the design placement on 6 sheets of paper. So you don't have to, it's not just a quarter of a design that you have to spin around. So you just have to take those pages together and then you have the complete design placement. So it's just a matter of folding your piece of fabric in half, vertically and horizontally, and pinning it on and tracing your shapes out. So you know exactly where everything goes. So that's one really great thing about that.
And you did a bit of glue basting, didn't you?
I did to put it all together. So just before we move on to the glue basting, just talking about the design lines and how people can transfer those onto their applique shapes. Mm-hmm. So you do have the choice of just tracing those in by hand if you want to. So that's the swirls that you have on the roses, and there's some extra lines on the bird's wings and the bird's tail. As I said, do that by hand, or what you can do is when you trace your applique shapes onto fusible web, trace those design lines in too. And if you're printing them out onto printer-friendly fusible web, you'll find that you've already got those design lines. So cut the shapes out, and just before you peel away the paper backing, flip them so that the right side is facing up, and you can either use a light box or a window, and you can just trace those lines in. And just trace lightly. I use my Sew Line marker in the grey colour. It's just like a little pencil, isn't it? I use this all the time. And then after I stitched, sometimes it's hard to follow that stitching line. You can easily just rub it out. So there's a rubber on the end, or I actually have a spare little Sew Line rubber that I use, or eraser, as they're called also. So that's one little tip. The next tip that I have is stitching those design lines in. You can either just stitch with blanket stitch, or you can use zigzag. But if you want to sort of, mix it up a little bit this week, maybe try using a triple straight stitch. So that's a stitch that most machines will have because it's actually a stretch stitch, so it's a flexible stitch. But we don't want to use it for that. We're using it for the fact that it's a little bit of a thicker stitch, and so when you sew with that, it moves forwards, backwards, forwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. So you can very carefully use that just to sew the spirals and sew in the details onto the bird's wings. And you would do that just on the single layer before you put it together for quilting. Yeah, so I mean, in the Facebook group, we're getting to see lots of, really beautiful quilts people are doing and the different ideas that they're using to do that. So the next tip is, once you put your 3 layers together for quilting, so your top, so you if you've already done the blanket stitching and applique, you're putting it together with the top batting and backing, or if you're doing the sketchy, you've just got the shapes fused on. And just make sure that it's really nice and smooth. So pressing it, I glue basted mine, so those dabs of glue, and then I pressed it from the front, I pressed it from the back. I wanted to make sure that it was really nice and held together. And just safety pins, so you can safety pin in all the background spaces, and lots of safety pins around the edge. So making sure that it's nice and flat, that quilt sandwich is nice and flat before you start stitching.
Have you ever stitched on a quilt where the quilt sandwich didn't end up too flat and you did get puckering?
Maybe, yeah, that is true.
And so what was your tip? Did you say that you pressed after every time you did some sketchy applique?
Yeah, so whether you're quilting or whether you're sketchy appliquing, always start from the centre and work out. So I stitched the hearts first of all, and then if I felt that it was looking a little bit kind of puckery, I would then press again. So even if I had to reposition pins, so sometimes you do need to move the pins because they might be in the way where you're going to stitch, but I did actually, press from the centre out. So I did the hearts, then I moved on to the roses. And a tip for sewing the roses, if you're doing those sketchy applique, is start on the outside edge of the shape and spiral in, spiral out, and then just outline that shape 3 times. And I think that makes a really textured rose effect.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Yeah, and then from the roses, I moved out to the leaves. And when I stitched the leaves, just outlined 3 times, and then I just did one little vein on the inside. I tried doing extra, but I thought, oh, that's too much. So I just did the one, just going from the inside out. And another little tip is sometimes when you're sketchy appliquing, it does get a little bit annoying every time you've got to bring your bobbin thread up to the top and few stitches and cut off the thread. So you can actually jump from shape to shape if the thread's going to kind of just go straight across, just jump from shape to shape, and then you can just trim the threads off afterwards as you go.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
And then you just added the details and the birds and then sewed the last little leaves.
That's right. Yep. I did a few extra details on the stars. I'm like, you love it when I do that, don't you? Laura loves stars.
I love stars.
Not everybody loves stars, we know that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So you maybe change that for a little heart or something like that.
Yeah, you can change anything in the design. Really just make it your own.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I honestly don't mind. Change whatever you want, put whatever you want wherever.
Yeah, personalise it.
Yeah, there's lots of different shapes so you can mix and match throughout the pattern sheet.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
That's right. And I have one final tip, and that is to take your time and enjoy the process. There's no rush with this quilt. It's not a race. Just work at your own pace, and it doesn't matter if it takes you a year, 2 years to make. If you don't keep up with us, that's totally fine. I mean,
well, we're doing it together, so
yeah, we are doing it together, and we do cut out the shapes and and chat while we're doing that too.
Yeah.
So just take your time, and if you're watching along with this course and you do want to join in, you can start anytime. So you can either purchase the full course. If you were to jump in now, you would actually get all of the course notes up to week 6.
Yep.
And then the final ones would be weekly as it goes. If you're watching this and this course if you're watching this in the future, when you purchase the course, you'll get all the course notes and the pattern sheets at once.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah. But I'm loving this, Laura. I love your designs.
Thank
They're
you.
so beautiful.
Yes.
So it's looking like a true medallion quilt where everything radiates out from the centre. It's looking very ornate, very beautiful. I'm getting very excited.
We've got one more block to go on the bottom.
Yeah, so the last rectangle block. And what we want to do next week is that we have a Facebook group, and not everyone's in the Facebook group. We have lots of people that are doing the course, and they send me emails and show me pictures, and we've had suggestions that people want to see what everybody else is making. So if you want us to feature your work in our video next week, just send us a photo or in the Facebook group. We're going to let everybody know. And so
we'll do a bit of a show and tell next week.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be really exciting because we've got different, we've got some black backgrounds.
Darker blues.
People just using their stash. One lady said she's going to make like a true scrap quilt and do different backgrounds. So they're all kind of like muted backgrounds. So yeah, it's very exciting.
It's very exciting. And then after that, we've got the borders, right?
We do, yeah.
And then we'll be joining it all together.
Yes. Corner squares, tiny corner squares, and then joining it all together. It's a Quilt As You Go quilt that's not going to look like a Quilt As You Go quilt, and we've got something really fun planned, quilting in between the blocks.
Exactly.
That's exciting.
Exactly. So another thing with this pattern is if you'd like just the one-off design, you can purchase any of the one-off designs on our website. They're all $11 each.
That's right.
They look good as like a cushion or a wall hanging.
That's so true. Like, so this center block, especially like a beautiful wall hanging. And then I also thought your rectangle blocks would just like make great sort of
like long pillows.
Yeah, long pillows.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
Good. Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Yeah, that's it for this week.
Yes.
So, yeah, we got to go off and do a bit of extra work. There's lots of work that we do behind the scenes, so we got to get cracking with that.
Yes.
Very Aussie, get cracking.
Anyway, thank you for watching.
Yep, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.